hell of a, she's so fine. Hell of a, blows my mind. Hell of a, lights my day.
Good morning, guys. Today is Monday, July 27th, 2020. And I woke up early this morning and I was reading my newspaper, which is the Chicago Tribune. And I came across this article and I wanted to bring it to my channel to give it some attention. It says, family wants rule addressing hateful sports jeering. High school player in Iowa faced racist taunts, spurring call for change. That is a picture of Jeremiah Chapman. The article is wrote by Shannon Ryan. When Keisha Cunnings moved from the Chicago area to Iowa for a lower cost of living and to avoid the downsides of city life with her young son, Jeremiah Chapman, she said she didn't worry too much about facing racism. She had experienced it herself as the only black student in her class in Oak Forest. But when Chapman was subjected to threatening racist taunts during a recent baseball game, the experience shook both mother and son. Quote, "This event was traumatic," said Cunnings, who moved to Iowa before her son entered first grade. "I am worried. Is he going to be on edge for every event? It's easy to say, this is what happens and you have to move past it. But he's 17. He's not an adult. He's not used to this. He just wants to be accepted." One of his football coaches checked in on him and he said, "All my life I've been trying to fit in, and this is a reminder I'll never fit in," end quote. Chapman, who plays for Charles City High School, about 2 hours north of Des Moines, said that during a June 27th game against nearby Waverly Shell Rock, opposing fans yelled at him, quote, "You should have been George Floyd," end quote, and quote, "Get back to the fields," end quote. He said they also chanted, quote, "Trump 2020, end quote. He said he initially heard them calling him, quote, "Colin," end quote, which he believes was a reference to former 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who took a knee during the pregame national anthem as a protest against police brutality. Quote, "I just ignored it on the field," Chapman said. "I'm trying to hurry up to get off the field, get these 3 outs, and get off the field. It was my teammates' last game. I thought we were going to win. I thought, maybe you guys can talk to them after the game. I didn't want that to be on my mind," end quote. Chapman said he told his coach, who told an umpire. The umpire asked Chapman how he would like to proceed, which Chapman said he appreciated. His mom said that might not have been far enough. Cunnings and her husband were out of town when they got a text from their son reading, quote, "Why are people so mean? What do we do to make people treat us so badly?" End quote. Quote, "It was handled the way Jeremiah wanted it to be handled in that moment," she said. "Jeremiah is not a huge attention person, but at the same time, Jeremiah is 17. He's a child. He doesn't have a choice. In my opinion, the game should have been stopped immediately. If they couldn't identify who it was, the whole student section should have been kicked out. Or our team should have picked up our stuff and left. Quote, "We will not play anybody who allows their spectators to be disrespectful," end quote. Waverly Shell Rock said in a statement that the school district's Title IX and equity coordinators are conducting separate investigations, quote, to ensure that all facts have been uncovered and considered as we move through this process, end quote. Quote, because the investigation into the incident continues to reveal new information, our efforts to communicate in a timely manner have led to some confusion and rumors. The statement read, any reports that indicate that the individual or individuals who made the comments is known are rumors. We apologize for the confusion and want to be clear that we are not backtracking or minimizing. We just need to get it right. Unfortunately, getting it right takes longer than any of us want it to. We are committed to a timely and thorough process. End quote. Charles City's administration also released a statement. Quote, our students must know we have their backs regardless of the circumstances and that we are fighting shoulder to shoulder with them to end oppression and to create the world that we know is possible. Our state and nation needs to know that our thoughts, words, and actions matter. We must do better. We must be better, end quote. Iowa became the first state to resume sanctioned high school athletic events in June, after most non-essential activities and businesses were suspended in March because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Shortly after, a team about 3 hours west of Charles City reported racist slurs directed at Latino students and families during a softball game. Chapman's experience with racism unfolded as protests continue around the country following high-profile killings of black people by police, including Floyd in Minnesota and Breonna Taylor in Kentucky. Quote, Jeremiah was very naive and very ignorant to racism, Cunning said. He really hasn't had to experience it as much. We live in a small community. He's really good at sports. I feel like this is a wake-up call to know that these things still happen and exist. I preach it, but to experience it is a totally different thing. That was his aha moment, but in a negative way, end quote. Chapman, who recently completed his junior year, is the only black baseball player on the Charles City varsity. His brother and another black teammate compete on the junior varsity squad, Cunning said. The percentage of black players in the Major League Baseball has fallen from 19% in 1991 to 8.4% last year, according to the Institute of Diversity and Ethics in Sports. Black players have discussed feeling ostracized in the sport and hearing racist language. Arizona Diamondbacks pitcher John Duplantier, I'm sorry, I'm not a baseball fan, so I don't know how to pronounce that name too good, recently told about being taunted with threats of lynching while he was a high school player during a, quote, being black in baseball in America, end quote, panel discussion with other players. In 2019, the Cubs banned a fan who made a racist hand symbol behind broadcaster and former outfielder Doug Glanville. Fans hung a banner that read, quote, racism is as American as baseball, end quote, over the green monster at Boston's Fenway Park in 2017, after Baltimore Orioles outfielder Adam Jones said he heard racist remarks while he was playing there. Major League Baseball has instituted many initiatives and programs to help diversify the sport at the youth level. Chapman, a four-sport athlete, said he took up baseball as a child to hang out with friends and because it was his grandmother's favorite sport. Quote, he told me that night of the taunts, I'm quitting baseball and I'm done with sports, Cunning said, noting her surprise because Chapman aimed to play college athletics. Cunning said the family has received support from the community and even people in surrounding towns who have come to support Chapman at subsequent games. He said he's having fun in baseball again and wants to continue playing baseball and other sports. He hopes young black kids hearing his experience take away a lesson in perseverance. Quote, you can't change your skin color, he said. You can't change for anyone. Be yourself. Be glad in who you are. Be you, end quote. Cunning said the family decided to speak out because she saw some of social media doubting the veracity of Chapman's account. She also hopes their outspokenness might make schools in Iowa and beyond institute a no-tolerance policy for racist and hateful remarks at sporting events. Quote, "This is not just an isolated issue," she said. "This is not just a Northeast Iowa issue. This is a nationwide issue we need to address." I wanted to follow that up with this from the NCAA. It's called Mind, Body, and Sport, Harassment and Discrimination, Ethnic Minorities. An excerpt from the Sports Science Institute's Guide to Understanding and Supporting Student-Athlete Mental Wellness. It was wrote by Terry Williams. I don't know that I'll go over all of it, but I'm going to hit the high points at the very least. While previous sections of this publication talked at length about common stressors on student-athlete mental health, because of the unique position these students are in as athletes, cultural factors exist that complicate those stressors even further for underrepresented student-athlete populations. As a woman of color and someone who has experienced her own clinical depression, I'm acutely aware of the challenges and stigma facing Black people when trying to address mental health issues. And as a trained licensed clinical social worker, I've had the great opportunity to engage with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and other mental health organizations that have allowed me to create mental health advocacy campaigns for the Black community. The following comments focus on the work my colleague, Yolanda Brooks, and I have done over the past decade with Black male athletes. To be sure, there are some commonalities in the experience of Black male athletes and the experiences of men and women from other racial and ethnic minority groups, and in the experiences of student athletes from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds across all races and ethnicities. In my work with Black male athletes, I have seen many struggle with socioeconomic barriers and remnants of a racist system that continues to plague many in this community. It is critical that athletes, administrators, and others working with minority and socioeconomically disadvantaged student athletes gain an appreciation for their unique experiences and backgrounds. To be a Black man in our society often means to experience overt violence and subtle forms of racism. It may mean being stopped and frisked, which is called a Terry stop, racially profiled, and made to feel insecure about the complexion of one's skin. It may mean feeling pressure to not appear threatening to others for fear of being harassed by police. Even in the absence of overt discrimination and racial violence, Black men are too often aware that discrimination and violence are possible. Having to be constantly on guard has real physiologic consequences. The young developing Black male may have experienced family violence and an absentee father. In some families, as a coping mechanism, Black men are taught to cut off their feelings and normalize horrific events that happen to them personally or to people they know. What happens to the child and or adult who watches a relative or anyone be killed in front of him and then has to go about his normal routine? In a number of instances, as young Black student athletes were developing, parents altered the family lifestyle, changed, left jobs, moved to another city, etc., so that the most talented child would have the best opportunities to succeed in his or her sport. This could mean playing for the best elite team, which is expensive, or getting the coveted college athletics scholarship. But if the student athlete is underperforming, loses passion for the sport, or wants to develop a more balanced lifestyle, engaging in social behaviors of a typical adolescent athlete versus the insulated, isolated, intense, laser-focused, all-consuming lifestyle of elite sports, there may be a strong pushback from the support network. especially those who've sacrificed or have made a strong investment in the student athlete. They aren't allowed to quit even if they wanted to, as there have been too much invested in that student athlete. Too much is at stake. It's just a really good read. In environments where there are sociocultural differences, some black student athletes may struggle to transition and fit in. This may overwhelm an already stressed individual. Student athletes, particularly those in high-profile sports, are not new to high-pressure situations. However, if stretched beyond their capacity to manage, they may find themselves struggling to adjust to the demands of their life situation regardless of talent, potential, or sport. And those stressors can leave the student athlete overwhelmed and vulnerable to developing stress-related symptoms, mental disorders such as clinical depression and anxiety, or even at higher risk to incur a career-threatening injury. It's just a really good read. I definitely wanted to bring that part up because, excuse me, this lady and her husband saw fit to move away from the violence, to take their children to a different area so that they would actually have a chance to grow up. And like I've said before, Chicago is a different culture, and get him out of the violence. And I think it said she had moved him away when he was 1 year old or something like that. A young child, anyway. So here he is playing sports and has to face the mean things that people say. I don't know what, I know they should probably be very glad that the parents were out of town for that game, because I could see that going a totally different way. And I don't know that it was handled the best way, but it was handled the way the child, Jeremiah Chapman, wanted it to be handled. And he was satisfied with the way it was handled, even though the mother was not. But at first I thought it was parents, and I still don't know that it's not. It sounds like it was coming from the student section of the opposing team. Regardless, it's shameful, and it's shameful behavior that people are exhibiting quite openly. I just felt like this needed to be brought to the forefront, because, like she said, it's not just happening in small town Iowa. It's happening everywhere. But I'm going to say this here and now. I will not tolerate any kind of foolery in the comments. Any kind of racist comments made on any video that I make will not be tolerated. Excuse me. Sometimes I feel like it's a teaching moment. Like yesterday, there was kind of a borderline little situation with a comment, and I saw that other people had made replies to that comment, and they had deleted them, which I kind of wish they had left them, because they were in line with what I was going to say anyways. But I did use it as a teaching point. That comment in particular, well, it was two comments. One was co-signing on the other comment. But I did use it as a teaching moment. But I will not tolerate any type of out-of-line behavior in my comments. My son was an outstanding student athlete. He played high school football and basketball. He was a standout star. And there are two high schools in my area. And, of course, the lines for those schools are, they're divided, basically. It's a big, fat Jim Crow divider. So, a lot of the black athletes were going to one school, and there were hardly any at the other. And he was at the other. Well, they have since changed that Jim Crow line, and it's now a more equal um, division amongst our county. But at that time, he was one of maybe, I don't know, 10 football players who were black. And I don't know if you guys remember, but his mother is mixed and his father's black. So he doesn't look any different. I would braid his hair once a week. He had to have 6 straight back braids. He was a pretty boy. And just beautiful kid. But and he had a really good personality. But we experience things like this on a regular basis. And he had a different mind frame. He was wise beyond his years, and still is. But I can remember waiting for him after football games. Now, I didn't miss any games, work or not. That was a deal breaker for me. If I couldn't be off on Friday nights to do the games, And even when he did traveling AAU basketball, that was just part of the deal. I just wouldn't be working there. That's how serious we took sports. But we experienced it on a regular basis. I know there was one time that I was waiting on him after the game. It was taking him forever because he wouldn't come out of that locker room until he was just perfectly put together. But I noticed that there were a lot of white men standing outside the locker room, and I hadn't seen them before. And I was pretty good about spotting parents and associating a kid with a certain parent. And I asked him who they were when we were leaving, when he finally emerged from the locker room. And he said, I don't know who they are, but I know they talk sports a lot. And I was like, what do you mean they talk sports? And he's like, oh, they tell us you did really well. Very strange the way he described these men. And I had actually hired his best friend, who was the quarterback on the team. My son was the receiver, and he was the quarterback. And I can remember him getting phone calls at work on his cell phone from grown men who would basically threaten him about how his play on Friday night should be. And I can remember the first night he got those calls. He was, of course, working with me, and he came in there and he was just white as a ghost. And I was like, what in the world's wrong with you? And he was mixed. And he said, I just got a really weird call. And I said, well, what was it? And he said, it was some man telling me what I need to do Friday night and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, maybe it was a joke. And he's like, no, this man was serious. And I was like, well, did a number show up? You know, we started trying to figure out who these people were. And I felt like that was the people who were outside of the locker room. Because, I don't know about where you're from, but where I'm from, they take sports very seriously. So, I just wanted to bring that little situation up. Because I've experienced it personally. And I know if I had been in this situation with this being my son, yeah, I probably would have walked right over to the student section and went bananas. But I didn't play that mess. So I would have handled it much differently. And I'm sure my son would have too. But I just wanted to bring that up, and each person's different in how they handle theirs, but he was taught from a young age we don't tolerate that, and are not going to tolerate it. So, anyways, I wanted to bring this whole story to the platform so that people could hear this guy's story and how serious people take sports, and how it's now becoming really just people are openly saying whatever they want, and that's not okay. Not okay at all. But anywho, I wanted to bring that up, and I hope everybody has a great Monday, and I will holler at you guys later. Thanks for watching.